All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Stamford. My name is Dave Arconti. I'm state representative for Danbury's 109th District, and I am the House co-chair of the Energy and Technology Committee. Before we get started, I do want to recognize a few of my colleagues that are here with us today. Representative Libby Florin from Greenwich, Representative Steve Meskers from Greenwich, another member of Energy and Technology in the hometown, State Rep Dan Fox. This past session, the Energy and Technology Committee, along with the governor, passed a number of exciting bills, but today we're here to sign House Bill 7152, an act accelerating deployment of 5G wireless facilities. And before hearing from the governor a little later, we're going to hear from a number of people on why this bill was important and why it will put Connecticut at a competitive advantage. But first, I want to introduce Mayor Martin, who will officially welcome us to the city of Stamford.
So as you can see, I've got a little bit of struggles going on here, but we're all good. And I'm going to start by saying something a little bit different. And that is that ever since the beginning of recorded civilization, the great powers, the great successful civilizations have all had transportation at the core of their success. And it was cities that formed at the confluence of rivers or at a mountain pass or had wonderful access to the Mediterranean Sea on a port or on the Nile River. And over time, we began to see over and over again those civilizations that commanded their transportation ways, whether they were waterways or waterways like the Phoenicians or roads like the Romans, or the seas like the Portuguese and the Dutch and the Spanish, and then finally the English. Those were the great civilizations. And it's true here in America as well. The great steps forward were always with an enormous change in transportation. And whether it was the Erie Canal, which changed the future of this part of the country, or whether it was the Transcontinental Railroad, or whether it was the Eisenhower interstate commerce system, those things fundamentally changed and strengthened our country. And any civilization that lets its transportation infrastructure fall in decay will probably fall in decay as well. And certainly that's a message for the state of Connecticut, which needs to work on its transportation infrastructure. But communication has followed the exact same path. The exact same path of those same transportation corridors were also the communication corridors. And whether or not they were putting telegraph lines along the railroads, or whether it was the Pony Express, or whether it was the invention of the telephone or the wireless, the new battleground is on electronic communication. And those cities, states, or countries that allow themselves to fall behind with the developments that are happening today in electronic communication are going to find themselves left behind, just as civilizations that did not take care of their transportation infrastructure have been left behind in the past. And so this bill, put forward by the legislature, and I will thank specifically Senator Norm Needleman and Representative David Arconti for co-chairing that committee, for putting forward a bill that will help Connecticut, this state with 169 different towns. Everybody's got to try to do it their own way. In this case, we have to figure out ways to do it together in a common way so that we can accelerate the adoption of 5G within this state so that we can be ahead of that curve and be a successful state as we go forward into the 21st century. Here in Stamford, our concerns over autonomous vehicles need 5G technology. Our businesses, whether it's CBS Interactive or NBC or some of the ones that are moving here now in the media stream, they need 5G. And for the state to take the very smart and very forward-looking view of we need to figure out how to make it as transparently and easy as possible to invest in 5G for the future. I thank you. I say congratulations to you and the legislature, including Dan Fox, who's right here, our local Stanford man. And I'm very happy to hear that we're signing this bill. And Governor, thank you for coming to this community, which is so reliant on this type of technology. And thank you again to the legislature for moving forward with this step in the right direction. I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Up next will be John Emra, State President of AT&T.
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, Mayor Martin. Thank you for hosting us this morning, and thank you for really your wonderful comments. I want to start by thanking Governor Lamont for his leadership on this issue. He has been a staunch advocate for 5G. When I've told my colleagues that I actually had a governor talk about 5G in his inaugural address to the General Assembly, I think they understood that this governor actually understands and gets technology. So thank you for your work on that, sir. Now, 5G holds the promise to change the way we all live and work in so many different ways, from lightning-fast connections to the internet to the simultaneous connection of thousands of devices where today that's just not possible. Now, these benefits are going to allow for all sorts of advancements. Mayor Martin talked about autonomous vehicles and things like augmented reality and virtual reality. Now, all of those things are great, but I think the most important thing that 5G holds a promise for is that it's really going to serve as a platform for innovation. In the same way, frankly, that 3G networks served as a platform for the smartphone and 4G networks for things like Uber and streaming media. Those served as platforms for innovators to come up with new and brilliant ideas, and we think 5G will do the same thing. Now, behind all of the cool things that are 5G is the unglamorous part, and that is the deployment of technology. And the industry is poised to spend hundreds of billions of dollars deploying technology nationwide, and here in Connecticut as well. And we generally have some very, very good rules here in the state of Connecticut, and I give Commissioner Dykes at DEEP a lot of that credit. Where there are wooden utility poles, it's relatively easy to deploy in the state of Connecticut. But this is a perfect location where there are not wooden utility poles. It is very, very difficult. We need the cooperation of municipalities and the cooperation of the state, who owns so much land, to be able to put that wireless equipment onto their property, and do so, frankly, in a way that is streamlined, gives us the regulatory certainty we need to invest. So that's really what this legislation does. And I can tell you, just to give you an example of why it's so important. Not too long ago, we celebrated the announcement of a new cell site we'd built in the city of Norwalk. It took 15 years. We wanted to put it on state property. 15 years to build that cell site. And that's simply not going to work in a 5G world for anything to take that length of time at all. So this legislation is a really smart and common sense approach. So I thank you, Governor Lamont, for your leadership. Representative Arconte, Senator Needham, thank you so much. And for, frankly, all the members of the legislature. This was a bipartisan piece of legislation. I think it had maybe one single no vote in the entire General Assembly. So it shows that what really can be done on a bipartisan basis in the state of Connecticut. So thank you all. Really auspicious day, and happy to be here. So thank you.
Thanks, John. I will mention that all of our energy and technology bills passed this year on a very strong bipartisan vote. Take a lot of pride in that. Up next will be Jim Gilday, Chairman of the Connecticut Commuter Rail Council. Jim?
Good morning. So who is this guy and why is he here? So my name is Jim Gilday, and I am chairman of the Connecticut Commuter Rail Council. As a rail commuter, and on behalf of all rail commuters along the New Haven line, our most basic needs are getting to our destinations safely, on time, and with as positive a riding experience as possible. Public Act 19163 will help in that regard as it accelerates deployment of 5G wireless technology along state-owned properties. You ask any Metro North passenger, and they will tell you horror stories about slow internet speed, unreliability, and complete dead zones. This bill signing today is a game changer in that it will improve all of that, and it allows for steady, consistent, reliable cellular service aboard trains we ride, thereby making our commute so much more productive. So this is a significant benefit to all rail commuters and will greatly enhance the day-to-day riding experience for all of us. So to the legislators, to the governor, we thank you very much. Thank you.
And up next is my esteemed co-chair, Senator Norm Needleman.
esteemed such as I am, driving down here from Essex on I-95, hitting traffic. I hope that we work to fix some of the transportation issues, and the 5G deployment will help with that if we get to autonomous vehicles. This is a big deal for the administration, for the state of Connecticut, and I'm happy to have been part of bringing this one in right under the wire. Thank you.
And up next, the originator of the idea for this bill, Governor Lamont, he has shown quite a vision when it comes to improving Connecticut from a technology standpoint. We had a number of really progressive bills in energy this year: offshore wind, the deployment of more solar energy in the state of Connecticut, committing to zero carbon emission technologies, and also bringing Connecticut in the 21st century with this piece of legislation. So, ladies and gentlemen, Governor Lamont.
First off, hats off to Dave and Norm and the legislature. It's a little complicated, 5G. It's not the type of thing that necessarily sweeps its way right through the legislature and you got it done. And as the mayor pointed out how important it is. This is a big piece of our infrastructure. And with 5G, it'll make it a little easier for you to telecommute if that leg takes a little bit of time. And but you're so right in terms of this is a platform on which we can develop, as John said. Look, what a 1G, first generation, what do we get out of that? Something called the cell phone began to take off in a real way. And 2G, the second generation, all of a sudden new applications like text messaging became a reality. And 3G was the beginning of the smartphone and how that has begun to transform our lives. 4G, as John mentioned, I'd say streaming video was the beginning of what was transformative, taking our phone and turning it into much more than just an IT data platform, what we could do in terms of video. And Mayor, I just visited Synchrony and telling them a little bit about our 5G conference we're doing together. And they said in terms of the applications they have, in terms of virtual reality, in terms of their relationship with hundreds of different retailers, 5G is key to them being here in the state of Connecticut and making sure we have the innovative platform that allows them to grow and expand. And yeah, if in the meantime we can make it a little easier for folks until I get that rail system sped up, at least we can make it easier for them to be able to access their cell phone with higher speed all along the way and make transportation not a nightmare, but functional in a way that you can stay productive. So I can't tell you that we talk a lot about infrastructure and everybody's talking about high-speed rail and speeding up transportation. Speeding up data is something Connecticut can be a real leader on. They're doing some experiments around the country right now, but this plan allows us to work across different departments, different commissioners, working with municipalities, starting with our public infrastructure, and then working, Mayor, right here in Stamford, how we can get access to the underground conduit, sort of a world I spent a lot of time in over the last 25 years. I want Connecticut to be the first. We got to be a leader. 5G is going to make sure that we're at the technological forefront. And this is a platform on which a lot of businesses and opportunities are going to grow. And that's why I'm proud to be able to sign this bill today. Thank you, everybody.
see you. That was Google. That was Google.
What is it? This allows easements on state-owned property for these transmission receiving.
I think it
devices?
accomplishes two things, and then John can do this. One, easier access to our public buildings, public facilities. That's why Metro North was very important, because that gets cell service accelerated there. And two, streamlining the permit process in places like Stanford, where a lot of the access is going to be underground because you don't see telephone poles here. So if I can work with the municipalities, work across different departments, including environmental protection, get that streamlined, we'll be at the front of the line for 5G.
So John, this explain, is this going to go from the cities out? And explain in simple terms, if you can. You can't just put up one big cell phone like we have now, because this stuff has to be lower to the ground, right?
It's actually a combination of two things, Mark. There's mobile 5G, which we at AT&T plan to deploy nationwide by mid-2020. So you'll see the traditional cell towers will be 5G enabled, but you also need to build what are known as small cell nodes, which are smaller. They're about 24 inches high. You would typically put them on the top of a traffic signal like you see here, and feed them with fiber optics. It's a combination of both technologies. So you need sort of better coverage than you have today, so you can provide that really fast speed.
Those smaller ones don't cover as much territory as the ones we see, right?
No, those generally cover around 1,500 feet. So they're really designed for very dense urban core areas where you have a lot of people using their phones at any given point.
So that would be, we do cities like Stamford, New Haven, Hartford, and then build out?
You'll see 5G broadly deployed, and you'll see it in addition in these dense urban areas. We want to make investments there to be able to handle the real capacity needs in those really, really dense areas. So it's both, Mark.
What happens in rural areas? Where I live there, it's underground wiring. You know, it's a developed community.
So you'll see the macro network that is here today, that will all be 5G enabled, so there'll be 5G service there as well.
Somehow on something, on a tree or something?
No. For there, the existing towers that are there can really handle there. When you get into dense urban core, you have much greater demands on the network, so you really need to add that additional capacity.
So this is a big plus for trying to clear up a lot of red tape, right?
Yeah, correct. And really the ultimate beneficiary are consumers, or our customers and the other carriers' customers who really are demanding better service. So yeah, this really helps to eliminate a lot of that red tape. And as I said, in one large macro tower we tried to build on state property, it took more than 15 years. We've been trying to enter into negotiations with cities, and it's, in some cases we're more than 800 days in, 2.5 years in with some of those cities.
This technology is needed for these driverless cars and lots of stuff like that, like these new appliances and things, right?
Autonomous vehicles, yeah. So for connection speed, what's also known as latency, which is how quickly the device is communicating back to the network. There's a lot of latency in the network today. You can't have latency in an autonomous vehicle. That's not a particularly safe thing. So 5G really enables those autonomous vehicles to become a reality.
You said this would be available by mid-2020, is that correct?
We'll be deploying nationwide. We've already started deploying in some places, and we'll do it. We've promised to do a nationwide deployment of mobile 5G by the mid of 2020.
Anywhere in Connecticut already seen it, or no?
Will they see it? Is that your answer? Your question?
Has Connecticut any parts of Connecticut?
We're still in the deployment stage today. That's part of what this legislation helps us to do.
We're moving on up in the list.
It is a long process. It's sort of a long tail to get there. So.
I covered a group that was putting some in a year ago. So I mean, there are places where it exists.
Absolutely. That process is ongoing today. We've started to deploy some of the underlying technology that makes it possible.
Competitors putting up transmitters right next to yours, or how does
in some cases, yeah. It's also a very particular need for the individual carrier. Verizon may have a different need in a given area than AT&T does, or T-Mobile or Sprint does. So we all have sort of different needs. In some cases, we may be in similar areas, but in other cases, we may not.
Existing cell towers have multiple companies on them.
Correct,
right?
They do.